Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Spyderco PITS 2 SLIPIT. This is manufactured in, I believe we say Maniago, Italy. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I just want to make sure and point that out right away. And this is also in M398, which is a very expensive steel for sure. And then titanium. Before we get started here, I just want to read this. Really, it's so that I don't get this information wrong. But this is on the Spyderco website. This is a non-locking knife. You can see here it's almost like a double detent non-locking knife. I just want to get this information out there right away. British knife maker Mike Reed specializes in crafting state-of-the-art non-locking folding knives. His first Spyderco collaboration, the PITS, which is short for Pie in the Sky. I thought that was interesting. Reed's forum name on British knife makers forums. That's apparently the information about that. Redefined the form for this genre. The PITS 2 takes that evolution a step further with a truly unique non-locking mechanism that consists of two integral locking spring arms. Making sure that I'm holding that there. So that you guys can see it, machined into the handle scales. I thought this was really interesting. The forward end of these arms, which supports the blade pivot, flexes as the blade is opened. I can actually feel this doing this. To provide pressure for its notched joint mechanism to bear against the stop pin. Meticulously machined from solid 6L4V titanium, the matte finished handle scales are paired with a full flat ground satin finished blade crafted from Böhler Uddeholm's M398, etc., etc., etc. But it is very interesting the way that what's actually happening there. I thought that was really cool, and I knew that me stumbling over trying to explaining it in my own words would be stupid. Ultimately, it's a non-locking knife. It feels like a double detent non-locking knife, and I know that a lot of my audience, considering that over 90% of you are from the United States, where we can legally carry, own, use, etc., knives with locks, you might be thinking, why would anyone want that? Well, we are lucky here. I mean, even the states here with the dumbest knife laws, it's nothing compared to a lot of places in the world that legitimately do prohibit knives with locking systems, and especially those that have super long blades. So this is a very premium Spyderco option for those people. Now, that might not be a lot of people, but I mean, the knife world generally does cater to all of the weird little nooks and crannies. I'm not saying you're weird if you live in a country that, doesn't allow locking systems. I think your laws are weird. I think weird is a nice way to say stupid. But yeah, I feel for you. Honestly, we've had it easy here in the United States. So this is cool. It's an option for those people, or people who just don't care if their knife locks. But anyways, this is a super cool, interesting, kind of weird, different release from Spyderco. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't. This was loaned to me by eKnives. Thank you so much to eKnives. I do not get to keep this. It will go back. So I will link this down in the description under eKnives. If you've never checked them out, you absolutely should. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and measure this knife. Not huge, but lots of ergonomic room. So the overall length is only, it's shy of 6.5 inches. Blade length is actually 2.75, which probably will help out legally in some areas. And then your cutting edge length is 2.5 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. It's a little guy, but let's look at the ergonomic lines here. As far as the standard grip position, it is about the same overall length as the AD 20.5, right? I mean, it does kind of go into the blade here. It's excluding this area up here, but if you kind of stop it right here in the standard grip position, you really do have quite a bit of room on this. I'll demonstrate it here in just a moment. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Some more interesting size comparisons here, given that these are Spyderco knives, of course. You can kind of see it's Spyderco being Spyderco. They definitely do prioritize ergonomic lines. The cutting edge is actually almost the same as the Para 3. So even though it does appear on the smaller side, there's actually, it's packing quite a bit in terms of utility and comfort. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? Well, it's not, it's not a Spyderco compression. It's not going to be like this, right? Actually, that one's, I need to adjust that. It's not going to be like the, we're not looking at something like this. But it is very easy to manipulate. There's a lot of tightness associated with this mechanism here, and you can kind of see on the inside here the little washers. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to see all the way in there, but you can see that. So it does just feel tight. Kind of, not quite Sebenza tight, but tight. Can you do a Spyderco flick with it? I can't. I'm not strong enough. Maybe your middle finger's a lot. Maybe you use this finger a lot. Maybe you can do it. I can't. But I will admit, it is very easy to manipulate despite that. It's an interesting feeling. You can actually feel those control, they call them control arms. So like in a truck or like in a suspension. It's interesting. But yeah, very, very easy to manipulate. And there is a significant, more force than you would assume would be required to make that blade, come out of its open position detent spot, I guess. And it is cool that this is completely and totally symmetrical. Even the pocket clip is a Spyderco clip, but it can be flipped over and, perfectly identical on the other side. So left-handed people, you can enjoy this the same way. It really is like the way that this is built is meant to cater to lots of different types of people who might not, be able to get cool, fun, premium Spyderco knife. Like it is providing that option. Despite the fact that the vast majority of people watching this video, this isn't going to be for you, I bet this caters to a lot more people than we realize, Trying to be fair about it, but it does feel super high quality. I can't say that the Italian, like the other Italian Spydercos that I've handled have always been like hyper impressive. And there's a couple little things here. We'll talk about it. But this does feel pretty good. It definitely does not feel lazy. Everything does feel very, very premium and very solid. So as far as what this is, which is pretty unique, it feels pretty good, but it is kind of tight. Perhaps it'll break in over time. Carry profile thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's not super thick. It's actually on the thinner side. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This is definitely a ridiculously easy knife to carry. And honestly, it was a pretty pleasurable knife to carry. It was cozy. It was comfy. It was lightweight, compact, all of that. So yeah, it was a pretty good experience. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Again, like I said, we are looking at M398 steel, very premium and not cheap, not at all. And then we have titanium. It is a little bit boring, but it is machined in a very unique way to accommodate for this system. And there's definitely some added cost there for sure. Weight is 3.1 ounces. It's literally almost what I would consider to be ultra lightweight. And the ratios are very, very good. 2.75 inches of blade, or is that what I said? Is it 2.75? I forgot. What's the blade length? Yeah, 2.75 inches of blade for 3.1 ounces of weight. Not bad at all. Balance on this guy, not that you're really going to notice it much at 3 ounces. Just a bit back from the pivot. Just fine. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here. So the blade stock thickness is going to come in at, I'm going to guess that's about 125 to 135. It is not even close. It's 117 thousandths, thinner than I thought. Let's do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very, very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So this is that should be a T8. I believe all of this, that's actually a T10. Let's try this real quick. Yeah, T10. And then these body screws here are T8. Now, personally, if this was my knife, I would just leave it alone. That screw actually needed to be screwed in. But if you want to gain access to the internals, it's not hard. There's only a couple of screws. How about the screw back here? Is this guy even a T8? It is. Even the pocket clip screw is a T8. That's really, really cool. So you can get in there. It might be a little bit fussy to get it back together, given that it is, some sort of unique system. But gaining access to the internals is pretty simple. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. We weighed it. We did the hardware check. We did all that. Let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes. So as is usually the case with Spyderco knives, like I said, the comfort is prioritized, and that is absolutely the case here. Normally I would say, gosh, I wish there was some jimping there. It's a Spyderco, OMG, what the heck. Why did I just say OMG? Good Lord. Why am I doing things out of character all of a sudden? Sorry. It is insanely comfortable. I just instinctively want to put my thumb up here. So periodically, when I had this thing out, I realized that I had pushed down on the spine and had actually released the blade from the open position. And that's something that I would just have to adapt to. You know, if all of a sudden all of my knives were gone and this was the only one left, I probably would accidentally cut myself with this thing a couple of times just because my brain tells me that the knife is locked, right? It's not a design flaw. Obviously, we've had plenty of extremely utilitarian non-locking knives here in the United States. I mean, like Swiss Army knives in general, they have quite the lengthy track record for being useful items. So yeah, it comes down to preference. Obviously, like if I have a choice, I'm going to prefer that it locks, right? But for what this is, like using it for tasks, as long as I remember not to put any pressure on the spine, yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a good tool for your standard tasks. Obviously, you don't want to use a non-locking knife for things that are, you know, would require a lot of force, right? Anything where you feel like you might put force on the face or on the spine, whether intentional or accidental, obviously you don't want to use a non-locking knife for that. I'm sure that many of you, your first cut with a pocket knife was with a slip joint, with a Swiss Army knife, right? My first cut with a pocket knife was from a slip joint. And I was like, oh, geez, yeah. You can't do that. You can't put pressure on the spine because it'll fold on you. So most of us learn that right away. So yeah, but you'd have to be cognizant if you're going from a locking knife to this. You'd have to be, you know, very, very much aware of it. The edges are really nicely knocked down, and you know this is going to appear kind of goofy to some people. It'll appear interesting to some people. It's kind of neat. There's not really a lot else going on design-wise. Like it's very clearly, even without the Spyderco logo, I'd be like, this is one of those weird Spyderco knives. And yeah, I do love the blade shape. Man, it's Spyderco. Like this is. They all are different birds' beaks to me, and they all, just like birds' beaks have ended up the way that they are due to, you know, depending on what you believe, evolution, right? That made it sound like I don't believe in evolution. I believe in evolution. It's fine with me if you don't believe in evolution. That's fine. I'm not here to discuss that. But just like how birds' beaks sort of ended up being shaped the way that they are to adapt to their environment and you know, the sort of circumstances that they would happen across as a bird in said environment. These different Spyderco blades are shaped in ways that are a direct benefit to many different types of pocket knife users. I found that Spyderco makes some of the most utilitarian blade shapes. They also have incredible cutting geometry and almost always do an excellent job in terms of heat treatment. I'll admit that I don't know the exact HRC of this M398, but I would be shocked based on the extensive information that we have on Spyderco's relentless ability to get things right in terms of HRC. I'd be shocked to find out that this isn't up there 62, 63, 64, where M398 should be. M398, how does it compare with M390? Well, M390, as you should know, is not a tough steel. It is a steel that is meant to emphasize the relationship between corrosion resistance and your edge performance, or your edge retention, right? So M398 is very, very stainless, and it holds an edge for a really long time when it's heat treated properly. Typically what we expect to see in production M390 for HRC is like 60 to 62. Yeah, it performs very well. It's not easy to sharpen, and it's not tough. It's not meant to be a tough steel. It's not a tough steel. It's not a hard use steel. It's a steel that absolutely will chip if it's not being used correctly. M398 is like that idea on steroids, except it backs away a bit from corrosion resistance. So it's still a stainless steel, but it's not quite it's actually not nearly as stainless as M390. But the edge retention is far superior, far superior. It is even less tough, though. It's even more chippy. So I think this is about a perfect knife to put M398 on, with 117 thousandths on the spine, a full flat grind, nice thin geometry, and the fact that the blade doesn't lock means that the user is very unlikely to try to use this knife for anything that would fall into the hard use category. Basically, you're just going to cut. You're going to do light to medium cutting, probably a lot of cardboard, and that edge is just going to last and last and last. On top of that, you have this nice dropped tip. It's kind of a sheep's footy style blade. You still have a tip, but mostly slicing belly and then dropped. So you can perform your draw cuts, but you need to make sure when you do that, you're mainly laying your finger on the blade and not actually. In fact, you could just do the draw cut without putting your finger up there. But it is good for that, definitely. For daily tasks, it's definitely going to be just fine. It says Spyderco, and it says M398 right there. And then we have the Spyderco logo, and then on the other side, you have the designer's name there, and then Maniago. I assume that's how we say that, Italy. Fit and finish, everything on this knife is great except for the cutting bevel. It's just a little bit wonky, and it's a Spyderco knives in general. It's kind of a dice roll, right? The Taiwan Spydercos tend to be the best in the fit and finish department. The Golden Colorado, maybe it's perfect, maybe it's not even close, right? But the Italian and the Japanese ones, and especially the Chinese Spydercos, oh, huge dice roll. Who knows? Everything is fine on this knife except for the cutting bevel, which is very uneven on this side, right? Now, if you plan to use this knife a lot, you're going to be sharpening it a lot, and eventually that will even out, especially if you're, really particular about it. But this came a little bit goof town from the factory. So, well, 2 E-knives, and E-knives sent it to me. So, yeah, and I would expect that to be the case. You might get a perfect one, you might not. Everything else about this knife is absolutely fine. Absolutely perfect. I have no complaints. We have a lanyard hole. We have a little back spacer, right? Pocket clip is a Spyderco clip. I wish it didn't have the bill on it, but it does. Whatever. In and out of the pocket is fine. Stop pin right here. Do we have any blade play? None left and right. Obviously, I can't push down on it because it'll disengage it. We do not have any pivot lash. And then it's not like not smooth. It's just really tight because of the system. Lots of strength holding it in place. No chance this thing is coming out without deliberate force. It is ridiculously tight in this position. And then we actually do have I think maybe is it slightly off? It is slightly off. They're really taking a risk there by putting that little groove in the backspacer because it highlights it when the blade is off center. This is one of those that has the adjustment head on both sides. So you could definitely tune this and get it perfectly centered. It's just a bummer when it doesn't come centered from the factory. Conclusion. What's the price tag? $262. Holy moly. Well, okay, let's remember, before we start comparing it with this and that, this isn't made in China, right? So that right away, if you're gonna throw me a Chinese knife comparison, no, I'll toss it right back to you. It's made in Italy. Now, as far as I know, it doesn't cost as much to manufacture stuff like this in Italy as it does the United States, but it's definitely a lot more than China. They did do a pretty good job with it. I'm a little bummed out that it's not centered. A little bit bummed out that the cutting bevel's not perfectly even, but functionally, it's completely fine. It's got a unique mechanism, right? Or a specific, specific machining was required to create this and get it right. It's not a simple cookie cutter, compression lock. I'm sure they've kind of got the templates for all of that. And then we have M398 steel, which is very expensive steel, period. If it wasn't expensive, we would see it all the time on less expensive knives. And we don't. We only see it faked periodically on cheap Chinese junk clones, and it ends up being like D2 or 3CR13 or whatever. This is authentic M398 made by Bowler, not cheap stuff. So all that considered, right, the price tag is a bit, when you break it down like that, the price tag is a bit more justifiable, right? It is titanium. Titanium costs way more to machine and just to obtain, versus something like G10 or steel liner or whatever. It's going to cost more. It still feels high. And I think a lot of people, including myself, we're going to view it that way because the object looks incredibly simple and is not going to be appealing to people like us because of the system. But we got to be fair about this. Just because it's not something that we, me and the vast majority of my audience have the luxury of buying and carrying and using knives that lock, right? Something like this, immediately we're going to see less value in. So it's not that the price tag isn't, I think it's a little high, but it's not that the price tag isn't justified. It's just that I think the vast majority of people are not going to find as much value in this. For people who live in other countries where maybe you can't carry a locking system, or if you're the type of person who either doesn't care or actually prefers non-locking knives, and at the same time, you're looking for a cool, slightly weird Spyderco that's utilizing a very premium steel, this is all of a sudden going to be tenfold more interesting. I think from that person's perspective, the $262 doesn't seem quite as bad, but I feel like everybody's going to agree with me, no matter what perspective, when I say it still feels a little high. I'm trying to imagine being part of the buying audience for this, and even that being said, I'd still be like, I was thinking 220, 230, right? 240 max. So it feels a little high, not completely and totally outrageous when you're considering everything. It is a fun Spyderco. I'm not sure that it's one that's going to, be up there on the all-time greatest. I don't think it's going to make anybody's all-time greatest list. It's still fun, though. There's something fun about Spyderco knives in general. They're just so different, and I think the Spyderco company invites stuff that's off the beaten path, right? And I think they like catering to lots of different types of people. So I love Spyderco knives. I used to hate them because of how they looked, but I find them infinitely fascinating. Also, the history with the company is infinitely fascinating. So, yeah, not one that I'm going to recommend to the vast majority of people, obviously. But for people who are interested in this knife, wondering, is it made well, right? I mean, if I'm like limited to these parameters, is this something you'd recommend to me? I think to specific people, but certainly not to everybody. Still fun though. Thanks so much to eKnives for sending this in for me to take a look at. Make sure and check this out at eKnives and check out eKnives in general. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.